I'm Emily Schoenbeck. My passage comes from Dickens' The Old Curiosity Shop, Chapter 6. In this passage, we see our heroine, little Nellie, having delivered a letter from her grandfather to the villainous Mr. Quilp, and agreed to return home with him to await his reply, now sits in his drawing room, while Mr. Quilp, in the adjacent room, gives his timid wife, Mrs. Quilp, the following instructions. Mind what I say to you. See if you can get out of her anything about her grandfather, or what they do, or how they live, or what he tells her. I've my reasons for knowing if I can. You women talk more freely to one another than you do to us, and you've a soft, mild way that'll win upon her. Do you hear? Yes, Quilp. Go, then. Dear Quilp, I love the child. If you could do without making me deceive her. The dwarf, muttering a terrible curse, looked around for some weapon to inflict punishment upon his disobedient wife. The submissive woman entreated him not to be angry, and promised to do as he bade. Do you hear me? Worm yourself into her secrets. I know you can. I'm listening, recollect. If you're not sharp enough, I'll creak the door, and woe betide you if I creak it much. Go! Mrs. Quilp departed according to order, and her amiable husband, ensconcing himself behind the partly open door, and applying his ear close to it, began to listen with a face of great craftiness and attention. Poor Mrs. Quilp was thinking, however, in what manner to proceed, and what kind of inquiry she could make. It was not until the door, creaking in a very urgent manner, warned her to proceed. How very often you've come backwards and forwards from Mr. Quilp, my dear. I've said so to grandfather 100 times. And what has he said to that? Only sighed and dropped his head, and seemed so sad that if you could have seen him, I'm sure you must have cried. You could not have helped it. Has the door creaked? It often does. But your grandfather, he used not to be so wretched? Oh, no, so different. We were once so happy, and he so cheerful and contented. You cannot imagine what a sad change has fallen on us since. I am very, very sorry to hear you speak like this, my dear. And she spoke the truth. Thank you. You're always so kind to me, and it gives me pleasure to talk to you. I can speak to no one else. It grieves me sometimes to see him alter so. He'll alter again, Nellie, and be what he was. Oh, if God would only let that come about. But I thought I saw the door moving. It's the wind. I used to read to him by the fireside, and he told me about my mother, and tried to make me understand that she was not lying in her grave, but had flown to a country beyond the sky, where nothing died or ever grew old. We were so happy once. Nellie, I can't bear to see someone as young as you so sorrowful. Pray, don't cry. I have kept this to myself for a very long time. I don't mind telling you my grief, for I know you will not tell it to anyone again. Mind you, don't suppose that grandfather's less kind to me than he was before. I think he loves me better every day, and is kinder and more affectionate than he was the day before. You do not know how fond of me he is. I am sure he loves you dearly. Indeed he does, as dearly as I love him. But he has no sleep or rest, for every night, nearly all night long, he is away from home. Nellie, last night he was very late, and I saw his face was deadly pale, and his legs trembled as he walked. When he had gone to bed, I heard him groan that he could not bear his life much longer, and wished to die. Oh, what shall I do? The fountains of her heart were opened. The child, overpowered by her sorrows, and the sympathy with which her little tale had been received, burst into a passion of tears. Mr. Quilp returned, and expressed the utmost surprise to find her in this condition. That kind of acting had been rendered familiar to him by long practice, and he was quite at home in it. Poor Nell! The child shrank so quickly from his touch, and rose and declared herself ready to return. I've been away too long. Well, if you will go, you will. Goodbye, Nellie. You're a keen questioner, aren't you, Mrs. Quilp?